Hey, so welcome back to our show. So today we have book 39, but even better, we have a special guest, Aaron Snow. So Chris,
Yeah,
why don't you tell us about the book and let's get on with this.
yeah, for sure. First off, welcome, Snow. This will be a fun conversation. Can't wait to get your thoughts on this one. This is a perfect topic for you as an educator. So I think you'll love the overall topic in general. The book that we're going to be going through today, book 39, is this book called Beginners, The Joy and Transformative Power of Lifelong Learning by the author Tom Vanderbilt. The general gist of the book is this guy challenges himself. He kind of realizes, it's been a really long time since I've learned like new things, and now he's getting later on in his life, in his mid 40s. He wants to rekindle that flame of new skills and learning new things and being more curious and questioning. So he starts to try all these different things, like becoming a juggler, trying surfing, a lot of other different singing, I think, is another thing that he does. So he just basically tries all these things, and he tries to become somewhat proficient at them. And then he talks about his journey of the joy of learning and what it's like to learn new things again, and how he was experiencing this as an adult this time versus when he was a kid, et cetera, et cetera. So it was a really fun book. I really enjoyed it. I thought it fit really, really well in terms of this whole entire year magical learning process, because obviously I'm kind of on a similar journey myself, and we'll talk about that in a second. So I'm going to share my screen here, and my high level reflection is learning is a lifetime sport. So for me personally, my reflection with this book started, my life kind of changed a few years ago when I made learning a renewed passion for learning in my own life. It changed everything for me personally. The compound effect of every single day of learning new stuff, and that stacking on top of other things and stacking on top of other things. It was after Amelia had passed away, and that was when this whole journey really set off for me. But these days, fueled by Amelia, like I'm obsessed with learning about new stuff at this point in time. Like, I don't know what it is, but like every single day I wake up and my mind, it's just more and more curious and invigorated. And I'm thinking about all new concepts all the time. And I'm having random conversations with friends that I never thought I would ever have again. It's been something that's been life changing for me. A part of me wonders, myself, and I was talking about this in the reflection, like, when did I lose that? And for me, I think it was kind of, we get kind of ingrained with this when we're younger. We're in high school, and I feel like you enter into there and you have to specialize. It's like you're either a jock or you're an athlete, or you're a goth, or you're a theater person, or you're a smart person, or you're whatever. And we're told, this is, you need to hyper focus on all this stuff, and you need to start to know more shit. You need to stop learning stuff and just know more things, right? And you're quizzed and you're tested, and you're ingrained in your head of like, know more stuff, be really good, be hyper personalized, be hyper specialized. And I don't know why. I think we all just, I don't know when it officially stopped for me, but it just, the joy of learning new stuff, was non-existent. I am blessed beyond anything in my own personal life to have rekindled that joy of learning, because like I've never felt more like a kid again in my entire life. I feel like everything's new. I feel like everything is fun. I feel like everything is fresh. I feel like my ideas and my imagination is exploding all the time, and my creativity is off the charts. Learning for me is 100% one of my core values, as we've talked about before in the past. But so like making learning a lifetime sport, I can guarantee you for the rest of my life, I'm definitely, hooked on learning every single day. And that's, why it's easy for me to kind of do this whole entire year magical learning journey. The topic, the question that we can talk about is, what was the last thing that you tried where you had absolutely no idea that you were doing? And what's the value of learning to you guys? I'd love to get your thoughts. And Snow, especially as an educator, I'd love to start with you, see what you think. When was the last time you tried, the last thing that you tried that you had absolutely no idea what you were doing?
Maybe it just makes you think about my day to day. Every day is completely different, and we really have no idea what the heck the day is going to bring, but we're just kind of like on stage giving it our best effort. But to answer it like more concretely, like in terms of what's like a new thing that I tried, I guess it hasn't been a new thing. I think I picked up piano. I got my keyboard out and been playing that a little bit more. And it takes me back towards when like I was like really learning it when I was teaching myself in my mid-20s, and like, yeah, how fun and exciting that was. And so I feel like I'm just kind of like not bogged down, but almost like I'm kind of bogged down in what I'm just habitually doing right now, that I feel like I'm not learning too many more new things. But yeah, like that's why like I end up enjoying reading, because I feel like through reading I actually am learning different or new concepts. So I feel like every day I read, I usually learn something new.
Yeah.
But because sometimes I feel like I don't necessarily learn more just by living out my day without, I don't know. I kind of want to just pass and throw it over to tree you now.
I want to take a, I want to kind of get my, kind of get my 2 cents on what learning for me is. I mean, for me, learning is the way I see it. And I think, I think we had some other book a few weeks back about you have to imagine yourself as that person that you want to be to even have a high probability of doing it. But for me, learning it's something that a lot of people will say I'm doing because people told me I had to. But
Yeah.
that's what I see myself doing the learning as I'm doing something somebody else told me. But when I start to enjoy learning is when I see myself as I'm enjoying the discovery of something, of new ideas, new concept, and whatnot. So for me, learning take a whole new perspectives. From looking from that particular lens, to me, learning to me is a positive emotion in terms of learning is a lifetime sport in your reflection title. And to me, that resonate. But if I were to look at it from the lens I had before, learning is a lifetime sport, it becomes a chore just because that's something that I did not did it for myself. I did it because someone else told me that I should be doing it. It is the way society works. So when you are in the society, you need to do what people to do. And so when we are as a kid, our perspective is how can I make this work? When we become an adult, the adult perspective on learning, how would this fail, right? So the perspective we take as an adult is reverse of what we took as a kid. So as a kid, you say, well, I want to go to the moon, right? How can I go to the moon? And you think of all the scenarios about things you can do to get yourself to the moon. But when you become an adult, you say, well, it's too much money, it costs too much, it is
school, I gotta go do this, I gotta go do that. I mean,
about gravity. You just come up with all the things that could not happen. As a kid, you look at things that could happen. As an adult, you look at things that it couldn't happen. Why it could not, why you couldn't do that. And so the perspective from a kid as a beginner, sometimes you hear people say, start with a beginner's mind. And to me, it reminds me of that. Say, when you start with a beginner's mind, you are thinking from the perspective of possibilities. If you think from the mind that we're taught in conditions as, a functioning entity in society, is we are looking at, what things is not possible. And we start eliminating these things until the very last possible, where there is no other alternative than this solution must be correct. But if you go from that perspective, I mean, how many possibilities are out there? There's just endless possibilities. So how could you even attempt to try? And so for me, it's the kind of, I want to get my 2 cents on what learning means to me. And to me, the question, to go back to answer your question, Chris, what was the last thing you tried that I have no idea what you were doing? Is, for me, it's like, it reminds me what we did a few books back. It's about what limitations you put on yourself, because you say, well, you remember what that book was, Chris?
I'll have to look it up.
You have to imagine, because you're talking about you become a writer. You have to imagine.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
So you have to imagine yourself as a writer, just to even get into character and let things happen. Because if you don't allow yourself that, then nothing's will happen. So the last thing that, had no idea what I was doing is like, even do this podcast. I would say I would never in my entire life would say, hey, one day I become part of a podcast, group or whatever. That's something, because the thing is, if we limit ourselves in terms of, that's not going to be, I won't do that. I'm just too introverted, or I can't speak well, or whatever the case may be. It will prevent you from even trying. But if you have imagined yourself into a character and learn new things and look from the beginner's mind and say what is possible, and that gets us to this point where we create a podcast, regardless of whether it's good by anybody's standards, but it is still a podcast. I mean, and you get to improve on it.
Couldn't agree more. That's been one of the funnest things we've ever done with the whole clubbing experience. We're trying to create an ecosystem. Everything that we're trying to do is infinite possibilities. We're trying to build this ecosystem. We're trying to live our values every single day, and the possibilities are completely endless. And the art that comes out of that, like this podcast is example, your Magical Learning Project is example, clubbing projects that we have going on. Like all these things are just compounding from learning every single day. And I look at Luca these days, my son, and I know I know you have 4 kids. I watch him like as he's 1-year-old right now, and I watch him as he's like exploring everything around our home, and he is just fascinated by everything. I can tell there's just a million things going on his head of like, I have no idea what this box does or what this thing does. I'm going to go explore the shit out of this and, try to climb on everything and eat it. And I'm going to try to throw it. I'm going to try to see what reaction I get from anybody, what it does to me. Like, I mean, he's just fearless about wanting to learn and explore anywhere that he goes. Like you can drop him anywhere and he's like, oh, this is amazing. What can I learn here? And just that passion for exploring new things and trying to learn new
things. Like the joy of discovery, right? It's not about, hey, I'm doing this because I was told to, or I should be doing. It's because I want to see what happened. I want to explore and discover things. So for me, it takes a whole new meaning. And when we're looking from that perspective, it's like, I can't get enough of it versus, I have to do all this all my life. Man, that's just the complete opposite views on same thing that we're looking at.
So,
Yeah, I think it's neat because when you think of learning, it does create this joy because I think, when you learn something new, it can make you feel creative. It can make you feel autonomous. And also if like that was your purpose, to learn this thing. I think that's a big thing that breeds self-satisfaction or self-joy. If it's creative, it's autonomous, it's purposeful. Chris, you brought that point back to how we're supposed to be so focused in life in terms of like, you should be an architect or you should do this. But what's interesting, when you are asking my opinion on it, you were like, well, as an educator, what's your thought? And so it's like, hey, yeah, we want people who were kind of dignified in one area, their perspective on things, because people who do like a certain thing specifically do have a more nuanced approach, I think, to things, or can take those certain contextual things into consideration that we might not, whether because we're in a different industry or we're a jack of all trades. And I think it's just, and in Trio, you said a couple of things that like sparked my interest, just how like imagination is kind of one of the intrinsic things that actually makes us humans. Other species don't have imagination for all we know, but we're pretty sure they don't, let's say. And how that's part of the human condition is like to imagine. And sometimes that's the thing, like we use like the present so much to envision what the future is going to be. That's why some people don't do things like we're jaded or something like that. We're like, oh no, I don't want to do that. We don't know what the future is going to bring. It can be fun to be in the beginner mindset because we don't know what tomorrow or next year is going to be. It can bring like a lot of more joy and curiosity rather than just thinking we know everything.
I love that. And actually, the last words you just said there, thinking that we know everything, has been a staple of our entire journey of publicly stating, we don't know shit. Like, and we're making that a point of all of this is to say, like, look, we don't know anything and we're not trying to pretend that we know anything. Yeah, we're learning new stuff and we're exploring new things, but that doesn't mean that we have any idea, we've cracked 1/10 of 1/billionth of a percent of the knowledge of this world, you know what I mean? And there's just so much more out there to explore and to learn and to even, you have any idea of what's going on.
And I think that's what we're trying to do though, whether through like science and numbers, all we're really trying to do is like pinpoint down, like, what is the truth? And so like, how do we get truth? Well, they talk about in my book that I'm reading about truth is in numbers. So like, oh, if Chris and Trio think that is good, then that is maybe good. But if we all kind of disagree a little bit about what is good, then like, well, what's the measuring tape that we're measuring here? And that's why like, the social sciences can be hard almost to like say what is objective. But I think it's like we learn like what is a good life or whatever. It's, I don't know, I think that's still like getting out there. And there are like objective things. As I was looking at in my life, like I'm enjoying this right now because why? It's company, it's intellectual conversation, and what objective things actually do make a good life. People were like, bringing in or whatever. So it's like we are fascinated with numbers. We can end up like, counting things, and we always want to end up putting digits to things so we can like actually track things and say like, oh, this is true. Oh, if you talk for people 30 minutes a day, that makes people happier than if people talk with people 5 minutes a day, or what objectively actually makes a good human condition.
Right. And that's the reason why we say we don't know shit. And so to borrow Stephen King's word, You start with a character and a scenario and let that story unfold. And so that's what we do with Company is, we say, what do we want to do and what things give us joy, and just do that and let the story unfold by itself. Because at the end of the day, how do you quantify happiness? How do you quantify certain measures in society? You just can't have measuring stick that everybody's going to agree on.
The adventure though is so fun. Like, I mean, I think back to when you and I started this whole entire thing. It's been like, I mean, Snow, we started this to try to build a particular business with values in mind and a purpose and a mission, but like it snowballed into, like, I never would have thought 2 years later and you would be on a call talking about, the 140th book, or whatever that I've written reflections for on this year of magical learning. Like, what the hell does that even mean? Journey, doing a podcast together. All these things are just compounded and stacked on top of each other because it's just fun. It's just the adventure of to do this with other people and learning and exploring together. Invigorating, man. It's just fun.
Yeah, if you look at like the day to day, it's like, oh, I could see that happening. But when you end up broadening out over 2-3 years or something, it seems like you've come so far.
Right, and there's no reason,
no rhyme or reason.
but
just
there
random.
It's just trying to live our values every day of learning and having fun, and this is what comes of it.
A living makes life.
Learning is definitely a lifetime sport. So, any final thoughts before we wrap today? What do you think, Snow? You having a good time? You going to come back?
Oh, no, I'm having an awful time. Yeah, no, I just want to think if you have anything more, or if you have any more questions for us about learning. And I guess you've kind of already said it, but what do you want to say, Chris? Is there anything, you have any more final thoughts about learning?
Just a blast, man. I hope to God that people never lose their love of learning. If somebody tries to tell you to, like, if I could impart any wisdom onto anybody, if we could go back and tell ourselves 20 years before, what would you tell yourself? And I honestly, I don't think my 18-year-old self would understand this, but I would say, look, stop trying to know shit and just start, exploring them and always never stop learning. I felt like everything was in such a rush when you were in college and high school to like special something, get to know something, be an expert in something, and you're this or play this role or this is your identity. And I would tell them, don't do the exact opposite. Like, I've always been jealous of you when I remember after we graduated and you're like, I'm going to go join the Peace Corps and go to Kenya. I mean, I can't imagine all the things you learned every single day that was new and invigorating. You probably learned lifetime lessons that I at the time, I in my own head, I was like, why would you put yourself through 4 years of college to go, never use your degree and to go do this stuff, and I'm like, at that time in my life, my reference point was go make money. Like, that was all that I cared about. But when I reframed everything after we lost Amelia, my whole entire life changed. Like, I went back to more of the fundamentals of like, what do I really love about life? And learning is fundamental to it, man. I mean, I don't know. I'm almost just embarrassed with myself that I've spent so much time not learning, and now I got to make up for it.
Yeah, and yet, like, that's either what was modeled to you, or like, I mean, you never really know how much you enjoy things until you actually do something. You like, someone can tell you what a coffee tastes like, but until you actually try it, and see the result it has on you, you really only know that experience. Then you can decide, oh, maybe I will drink coffee, or maybe I will travel more. And so, I mean, it's just like, we're conditioned so much around who we're around, I think. And whether I think of myself as an educator, how I'm constantly like modeling what it is to be a human, or what it is to be, and I think it's, so anyway, Trio, on to you.
Yes, to me, experience is something you cannot be taught. You have to experience yourself. And in order for you to do that, don't always follow the script. Don't always follow instructions, because when you do, nothing new will happen. Because if you follow a recipe for a cake, well, it just tastes exactly the cake the recipe would. If you don't follow, like, just be fine and explore. And
well, what if you want to make a cake though?
Well, make that chocolate cake, and next time, vary the ingredients. I want people to take away from learning. Learning is about finding new things, finding the joy of discovering new things that would not have been predicted. And to me, that is a joy in itself.
Agreed. Well, so if everybody's listening in here, the question we can leave you with today is, what was the last thing that you tried where you had absolutely no idea that you were doing? Drop some comments in below, and we'll see you all tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll see you next time.